Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about two Hollywood bad boys, your James Dean and Nick Adams. Now, the first Hollywood man in crisis I'm going to be talking about is actor James Dean. Now, your James Dean is considered to be the archetype for the bad boy, a social construct created by Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And this bad boy is supposed to be a loner who is brooding and angry due to all the troubles in his life. Now, this bad boy image that Hollywood constructed around James Dean is something that still goes on to today, because when we look at your James Dean, we can see images of this bad boy archetype that was revolved around him in many rebel characters, such as Dylan McKay from Beverly Hills 90210, to many rappers like your Sean P. Diddy Combs and the late Tupac Shakur, and many of the gangster rappers that are out here today. All of them have their root and foundation in the late James Dean, who was known as a cultural icon for teenage illusionment and social estrangement, and being an outsider from the signature roles he played, such as Jim Stark in Rebel Without a Cause, Cal Trask in East of Eden, and the surly rat hand Jet Rink in the movie Giant. And your James Dean, while he played many of these bad boy roles, was on the road to becoming a man in crisis ever since he was 9 years old. Now, your James Dean, when he was young, was considered to be a boy who had a hard time dealing with male authority, because he was one of those boys that only his mother could so-called understand. So your James Dean was a mama's boy from minute one, and after his father left farming to become a dental technician, he moved his family to Santa Monica, California. And as they moved to Santa Monica, California, sadly, your James Dean, who was close to his mother, the only person who they say was capable of understanding him, he wound up losing his mother when she had uterine cancer, and wound up passing away. And because she wound up passing away, there was nobody to care for your James Dean. And because there was nobody there to care for James Dean, because his father was working long hours, he sent your James to his aunt and uncle, who were out living on a farm in Fairmont, Indiana, as Quakers. Now, your James Dean's father served in World War II and then later remarried, but I don't know if he had anything to do with his son. But during his adolescence, he sought the counsel and friendship of a local Methodist pastor who basically took advantage of your James Dean. And as he took advantage of James Dean, he wound up sexually abusing him. And this sexual abuse led to your James Dean having issues with his sexual orientation. And this sexual abuse again led to your James Dean winding up starting further down the road to becoming a man in crisis. Now, while this was going on, your James Dean still remained popular, even though he was enduring this trauma from being taken advantage of by men in authority. And this also further exacerbated his problems because the first man in his life basically abandoned him, and that led to him having issues with male authority and male authority figures. Moreover, I believe this is one of the reasons why your James Dean had a problem with setting a direction with his life and was winding up out here looking to take a lot of risks, because the man who exploited him took him to do things like bullfighting and car racing, and again, putting him on a road to danger and not really thinking about his own safety. And as your James Dean was a popular student in high school, he went out here and played varsity basketball, studied drama, and competed in public speaking before graduating and going to UCLA, but then wound up dropping out of UCLA to become a full-time actor. Now, your James Dean, as he came to Hollywood, started taking little small roles here and there before eventually winding up getting bigger roles in movies. And once he got a role, in his first major role in a movie, which was East of Eden, this basically laid the foundation for your James Dean becoming a star, because your East of Eden featured a character, Cal Trask, who fit the archetype for the bad boy, and this archetype for the bad boy basically became your James Dean's signature role, and it became a signature role for him, and it led to him becoming a star. Now, most of your James Dean's performance in the movie was unscripted, and he was doing things like ad-libbing most of the scenes, but that worked well for your Hollywood because they wanted to go out here and put him up as the bad boy, put him up as the image of rebellion, and that was what made him an icon as he went on to star in after East of Eden with Rebel Without a Cause. And this Rebel Without a Cause was a role where your James Dean was paired with Natalie Wood, presenting so-called teenage angst. But what Madison Avenue and Hollywood were trying to do was trying to promote the social construct of the bad boy and make this the ideal for men to go out here and aspire to be. And while this was going on, again, your James Dean was dealing with a lot of issues and troubles in his life due to the sexual abuse he suffered at the hands of the pastor who he trusted and other men. And this all again made your James Dean look like he was struggling with, made it where he was struggling with different things. And as he was struggling with different parts of his life again, it was making it hard for him to navigate life. Even though he was having great success as an actor, his personal life had serious issues, and people saw those serious issues. Now, after Rebel Without a Cause, your James Dean then starred in the movie Giant as a surly ranch hand, again, another bad boy image. And this bad boy image was something that was becoming his archetype as related to things. And as he was out here becoming a star as related to the bad boy, he had other followers behind him, like the late Nick Adams, who I'm going to talk about later in this video. And they all wanted to be a bad boy like a James Dean. But your James Dean, as he was playing the bad boy, was a man in crisis. And this man in crisis was dealing with issues as related to his sexual identity. He was dealing with issues as related to his personal life. And he was struggling with all sorts of issues as related to his identity. I mean, yes, he went out here and he had relationships with men and women. And he was noted for having a threesome with Eartha Kitt and the late Paul Newman. This is what is alleged, that they had spit roasted your Eartha Kitt and made the Catwoman purr. But your James Dean had really, again, a lot of issues as related to his sexuality and personal issues. And this was one of the reasons why he was out here looking to go out doing a lot of driving. He wanted to go out here and race because he was running away from his problems. And as he was running away from his problems, he went out here and was buying himself a lot of fast vehicles like a Triumph Tiger T110 and a Porsche 356. And he went out here and was participating in races until the studio had told him he couldn't do it anymore because he wanted to compete in the Indianapolis 500, but the schedule made it impossible. And again, the studios didn't really want him racing because that was a liability to the studio, and they didn't want their actor to wind up getting himself injured. So while he was filming the movie Giant, they told him he couldn't race. But after that, he then went to go out here and participate in racing, picking up a more powerful Porsche 550 Spider. And as he was out there with his stunt coordinator and a photographer and different people, they were out here racing this car when it ran into a Ford two-door driven by another man. And sadly, after they ran into this car, it got damaged. And sadly, your James Dean was killed instantly. And this guy who was playing the bad boy became a man in crisis. And this man in crisis, his life wound up ending his life because he was driving to race away from his problems, but then ran into an obstacle of life And sadly, as he ran into that obstacle of life, he never got to resolve many of the issues he was having in his life as a man in crisis. And again, your James Dean, while he was the essential American bad boy, he was living a rough life, and he was living a rough life because he had no he was a mama's boy who was too close to his mother, could not go out here and function as a man, and he was sadly taken advantage of by predatory men who turned him into a man in crisis. And as he was in Hollywood, he struggled with his sexuality and his male identity because his father had abandoned him, and because his father had abandoned him, he wound up in Hollywood, and he wound up being exploited and turned out as a man in crisis. Now, the second Hollywood historical man in crisis I'm going to be talking about is the late actor Nick Adams. Now, your Nick Adams was known for playing a bad boy on the ABC TV series The Rebel. However, in real life, he was a beta male orbiter whose life became one of a man in crisis. Now, your Nick Adams was born in 1931 to a beta male father, and this beta male father was a coal miner. And when his uncle wound up passing away, he wound up packing up all of his family's belongings into an old jalopy, and then just started driving until he ran out of gas and money. And when the family wound up in Jersey City, New Jersey, somebody felt sorry for Nick Adams' father and allowed him to become a janitor in an apartment building where they had a living quarters in the basement. And this is where your Nick Adams lived for a while until the family moved to Van Nostrand Avenue between Ocean and Rutgers Avenue. And that's when the mother went out here and started working because the father was always in debt and struggling. And I believe it was that foundation of seeing that beta male father that started your Nick Adams down the road to becoming a man in crisis, because he saw his father not taking any sort of leadership role and drifting through life. He basically thought that this was the way to go as related to his own life, because he saw his father going out here and being somebody who was just basically just drifting through the course of life. He never learned how to set a direction for himself as a man, and that was one of the things that led to your Nick Adams basically following in the footsteps of his father as he began starting on the road to Hollywood. Now, your Nick Adams basically could have set his own course in a different direction when he was younger, because he was a very successful athlete at Henry Snyder High School and was out here a successful baseball player who was offered a position in minor league baseball with the St. Louis Cardinals, but turned it down because he wasn't interested in the low pay. But what your Nick Adams really didn't understand was that in the farm leagues, a player could build themselves up and go into the major leagues. Unfortunately, like most beta males, your Nick Adams wanted to go out here and get the fast money, and he wanted to go out here and work as a bat boy for the Jersey City Giants, a minor league team, while he was out here hustling games of pool. Again, Nick Adams was caught up in trying to get the fast money as he was just out here drifting and orbiting. And your Nick Adams was a textbook beta male orbiter who was just looking to follow whoever, wherever. And that's what he was doing until about 1948, when he wandered into an audition for the play The Silver Tassel, where he met Jack Palance. And that's where he decided to go out here and wanted to become an actor. Now, as he went out here on his quest to become an actor, he ran into different actors like Henry Fonda and many others, and he had these ambitions to be this actor, but he didn't really understand that actor is a rough business, and it's a very rough business where you're not going to really make a lot of money in the beginning, and you're just going to struggle. But your Adams went on with his acting ambitions, even though his father told him to get a trade or be a barber or something. But again, your Nick Adams was a follower and not a leader, so he didn't want to go out here and put in the work towards becoming what he wanted as related to craft. And this was one of the things that hampered your Nick Adams as related to success, as related to his career, because he went to New York for about a year, struggling to find work as an actor, but then decided to go out here and go into Hollywood. And as he went into Hollywood, he went out here looking to get different jobs like doorman and usher and maintenance man, hoping to go out here and try to sell himself as an actor. But he got fired from a job at a theater after he put up his own name as a publicity stunt. Because again, with beta males, it's all about the attention that they want. And what they want to do with jobs that they get is create a covert contract with them, with Hollywood, where they think, oh, I'll get this job working in different theaters and places in order to get discovered. And hopefully some producer or director will eventually see them and then want to sign them for a job. And that's what your Nick Adams, again, he was orbiting around Hollywood hoping somebody would see him. And while it got him jobs here and there, it really didn't lead to anything serious because he was just struggling as related to his career. And he took theater workshops, but then eventually was running out of money to the point where he had to join the U.S. Coast Guard in order to make a living. And while he was out there, he eventually wound up running into doing impressions of James Cagney and other celebrities, and took his lead so that he could go out here and star in a small role as Seaman Rober and Mr. Roberts. And that was the start of him starting to get some sort of break. And off the success of Mr. Roberts, your Nick Adams was signed to a contract with Warner Brothers, where he had several roles in films that were small, such as Rebel Without a Cause, movies like Picnic, and movies and other TV shows like Wanted Dead or Alive and No Time for Sergeants. And then he also had a small role in the iconic movie Pillow Talk. Now, as he was doing this, going from these jobs here to there, your James Dean was orbiting around your bad boy image of James Dean, and he met James Dean. And while he was meeting James Dean while jitterbugging for a soft drink commercial, he then started following behind your James Dean. And sadly, your James Dean wound up passing away, but your Nick Adams showed how much of a beta male he was, because after your James Dean passed away, he began doing imitations of your James Dean in order to get himself noticed. And again, this is the type of stuff that beta males go out here and do. Beta males will go out here and try to copy another man who they believe is an alpha male in an effort to try to build up their own image. But the problem with that is these guys wind up extremely insecure because they don't have the confidence to go out here and build themselves up and organically, and they will try to make themselves into this image that does not really fit them. And that's what your Nick Adams was doing, trying to make himself into a bad boy. But the whole problem was, as he was going out here trying to make himself into this bad boy, things weren't really going well for him, because as he was out here pulling all sorts of stunts to get attention, by like saying he was being stalked by a crazed James Dean fan, being photographed at James Dean's grave. I mean, this is parasitic behavior. I mean, leeching off other people. But it just shows how little confidence your Nick Adams had, because instead of him going out here and creating his own distinct image, his own distinct voice, he went out here and tried to copy your James Dean, even to the point where he was getting arrested by driving in fast cars. But he just was going nowhere because he was not his own man. And because he wasn't his own man, he was on the road to becoming a man in crisis. Now, once he started to see that he really wasn't going anywhere copying James Dean, he started to copy another Hollywood bad boy, which was your Elvis Presley. And as he was out here copying Elvis Presley, he went out here and started chasing behind Elvis Presley, trying to be his friend. Again, classic beta male behavior, because beta males, they always orbit around females and alpha males, hoping to try to copy their coolness and hoping to try to leech off of their coolness. And that's what your Nick Adams was trying to do as he was trying to go out here and struggling to build his own career. I mean, he came out there basically orbiting around Elvis, hoping to try to get some sort of coolness from Elvis. And he was supposedly a friend, but he really wasn't a friend, because beta males are not anybody's friend. No, they are only there because you have higher social status, you have more popularity, and they hope to leech off of that popularity. And that's what your Nick Adams wanted to do with Elvis. He wanted to be able to get some light from his star, and that's what beta males try to do. They try to get cool points from other people because they don't have the confidence and the self-esteem to go out here and be themselves. Now, while your Nick Adams was getting guest spots on TV shows and making appearances on different shows, eventually he was able to get his signature role playing Johnny Yuma in the ABC series The Rebel in 1959. And the irony was that while he was playing Johnny Yuma, this ex-Confederate, journal-keeping, sawed-off shooting troubleshooter in the old American West, he wasn't the leader or bad boy alpha male he was portraying. No, he was a beta male. And this beta male, while he created this show about this Reconstruction beatnik who was basically a drifter through life, he was showing how much of a man in crisis he was, because while this character was drifting, his career was basically going nowhere over the course of the 3 years of The Rebel, and eventually the show wound up getting canceled by 1961, and that's when your Nick Adams' career started to hit a peak with an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor for Twilight of Honor. But after losing the Academy Award to Melvyn Douglas, that's when Nick Adams' career went into a serious state of decline. And while he got leading roles in shows like The Outer Limits and went out here and worked for Toho Studios for several of their films like Frankenstein vs. Baragon or a Godzilla movie and the movie Die Monster Die, your Nick Adams' career continued to go into decline as he was dealing with issues in his personal life. Now, your Nick Adams married former child actress Carol Nugent in 1959 and went out here and had 2 children with him, Allison Adams and Jeb Stewart Adams. And while this marriage was going on, your Nick Adams was having serious problems because he wasn't able to get lucrative acting jobs since 1963. And your Nick Adams, deciding to try to get some attention for himself, went out here and threw his entire family under the bus by announcing on the Les Crane Show in 1965 he was going to divorce his wife, and eventually while this stunt shocked a lot of people, it led to the further deterioration of Nick Adams' marriage, where he tried to reconcile a week later, but the whole thing with his life was things were getting worse with it. And as he was out here and having issues in his marriage, he allegedly was having an affair with Kimi Mizuno, a Japanese actress who he was working with when he was doing Toho Productions. And this is what your Ellison Lee Adams says led to their family divorcing, was the fact that your Nick Adams was out here having relationships with his leading ladies, and because he was having these relationships with these leading ladies, this allegedly was the reason why your Nick Adams and his wife, Carol Nugent, wound up eventually divorcing, because she couldn't deal with him not being able to take care of the family, and eventually got the divorce and custody of the children. And then, as they were having a hearing, your Nick Adams allegedly wound up taking the children away, but then eventually wound up bringing the children back. Now, your Nick Adams, as he was struggling with these different issues in his life, again, showed that he could not really lead his own family, and he had no real direction after he wound up struggling in Hollywood. And he was struggling in Hollywood for the same reason that his father was struggling, because his father couldn't set a direction, because beta males just can't set a direction. They wind up struggling for extended periods of time until people have pity on them, like the man who gave Nick's father a job as a janitor. They can't work on their own. And your Nick was struggling for the exact same reasons, because he didn't know how to go out here and set a course for his career, set a direction. He wanted the fame and the attention from the women. But the sad part is he didn't know how to go out here and get any sort of direction for himself. And he didn't know how to set a course for where he wanted to go. I mean, he had talents as related to baseball, but he didn't want to go through the hardships of putting in the work as a baseball player in the farm system. He thought the pay was too low because he didn't understand that men work towards a payoff. And because he didn't know how to work towards a payoff, he was looking for a fast payday from Hollywood, but never really got that payday and struggled for an extended period of time, eventually falling out of Hollywood, and then wound up taking on jobs like movies like Los Asesinos in 1968 from overseas, which was filmed in Mexico. He then bought a plane ticket with his own money and flew to Rome to star with Aldo Ray in a movie called Murder, the Third Dimension. But sadly, when he got there, he found that the project had been canceled. And when he found that the project had been canceled, he was extremely demoralized. And that's the way one of his co-stars, Susan Strasberg, found him when he was in a Rome bar, because he basically needed that movie to be a success in order for him to be able to feel like he was somebody. And since he couldn't get this job, he couldn't find any success. He was really down on his luck because his marriage had failed, and he had nowhere to go because he had no real direction for himself. And as a result, he wound up being found dead in his bedroom, slumped dead against a wall. And again, it was a sad end to your Nick Adams, who had been taking drugs in order to deal with all the stress of his aspirations for being a Hollywood star. But the sad part is, this so-called bad boy, while he played a rebel on TV, was a beta male orbiter. And sadly, this beta male orbiter wound up going nowhere because he could not, again, set that course for himself to be the alpha male he actually wanted to be and be the star that he wanted to be. No, he spent most of his life going out here copying other people who he thought were cooler, like your James Dean and Elvis Presley. And because he was out here and was copying other people, he really never became anybody distinct. And because he never became anybody distinct, he wound up becoming a Hollywood star who wound up with a career where his best role was, again, an ABC TV show, where while he played a rebel, in real life he was just a man in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to many beta males winding up on a road to going nowhere, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, All About Nikki, a fabulous first season. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air meets Clueless in this absolutely fabulous African-American 1990s teen sitcom. Get all 13 episodes of All About Nikki, the fabulous first season, in paperback and e-readers today.